Okay, so one thing I did not actually go through here that we should go through is the different meals and allowing you to see how our Gemini API, our Gemini prompt is actually giving us accurate results. So we're going to do that now. Let's go and allow this to select another item. So that was this is the same item. This is the chicken marsala that we selected previous. Or no, this is yes. Okay, good. So now we see a completely different item, right? Now we've got what is a weaker, probably lunch or breakfast, or I'm sorry, lunch or dinner, and we do see that it does better on carbs, right? Because it's got pasta. Does well on protein because it knows that there's probably meat in that. It sees the meat, the texture of the meat in these. What it's kind of like a spaghetti sauce, or a ragu or whatever else. But we see the fact that this is not as strong in certain nutrients, right, as our chicken marsala. If you think about chicken marsala has, it's got obviously chicken, mushroom, a wine sauce, and spinach, right? So there was something green on the plate. There's nothing green on the plate here. We've got iron from some meat. We've got zinc from the meat. Um, but and we have a little bit of calcium that comes in the noodles, but magnesium and B vitamins are low with this. Omega 3 is virtually non-existent. Potassium is pretty good because of the tomato sauce, and then there's virtually no iodine. So this actually, obviously translates into um, a more alarming hexagon piece here, right? So we see that our API is working. We do get different items here. So we see seaweed, cheddar cheese for calcium, again with that watercress. Then for choline, sea bass is a recommendation. Add some meat, right? Or add some, add some. Spaghetti is great, but it's not enough, right? Add mushrooms. Usually choline is found in proteins. And so that's great. Now we're switching to another meal, and I believe this is going to be the salmon. Correct. So salmon with spinach and lemon does a lot better, right? So let's look at this. Salmon, and these are not cumulative, right? These are our our per meal. If you recall, we made sure that this was per meal. And so we see that carbs is minimal, fat is probably a little bit much, um, which is actually why it's red, because you've got salmon is actually, it's got good fats and bad fats, but then you have this sauce here which it's picking up as a butter sauce, which it is, right? So it's accurate there. But your iron is great. Iodine is phenomenal with fish. B vitamins are pretty much closed. Omega 3 is going to close with salmon because salmon is high in omega 3s. And then we have zinc. Calcium comes from, I believe this green vegetable is something that's relatively high in calcium. And remember, this is on our 60% scale, so it's good for a meal. So this is probably about 40% of calcium. We don't want parents to feel like something that's good at calcium but is, still 40% for the day is a loser. So we make sure that if it's 40% for a meal, that it's treated, it's green, it's good. Magnesium and potassium do well. The only thing this doesn't do well with fiber as well, and choline, because choline is in the salmon, fiber is in these greens. And the only issue is probiotics, or is it an issue, or it's just something that's not particular, it's not there, right? Wouldn't be something you would expect to be there. So overall, our hexagon map here is doing, and if I can get rid of this for a minute, there we go. Our hexagon map is doing very well, right? Um, and the parent sees that, okay, the only thing left is probiotics here. For certain meals, we might want to think about just not even mentioning certain nutrients, because if this is a very healthy salmon meal for a child, why would you need probiotics, right? You don't necessarily need that every meal. It's something to think about. But this is good. This is very good. So I just wanted to highlight the difference in some of our scans here, and now we can think about moving forward with what we discussed before. Okay, so let's take a look at our finished version 1 of the app, or at least I would say finished enough for us to start reviewing it and thinking critically about its strategic value. So I took a video here. This is actually on our iPhone itself, not the simulator. And we've got our functionality working where we go and get a scan and we scan the same food and we see our meal analysis come up: iron, iodine, calcium, omega-3. And then I'm just going to step back here a second. We have our little section here that's supposed to summarize. I haven't gone through the trouble of actually fully adapting this because there's some other things I want to look at first. But you saw the idea in the Claude design videos where we go in and we say this meal does or doesn't support certain outcomes. Would love to get rid of that. There we go. Oh, it's okay. Does or doesn't support cognitive speed because iodine or omega-3 is low. Does or doesn't support memory. And then it includes the actual nutrients where it's low. So that can still be added, but this is functioning completely on the app itself. We're gonna press play. Once we click our recommendations tab here, this is the actual recommendations tab where we have our carousel up top of our different items. So we know calcium, fiber, iodine, omega-3, and probiotics were low, I think, right? So calcium, let's look at our, calcium, iodine, omega-3, and probiotics were all the things that were not in green. And so once we go back to our recommendations area in a couple seconds here, we're going to see calcium, fiber, iodine, omega-3, and probiotics are each represented in our carousel. And we have our lead sort of recommendation here. And then once I scroll here, right, initially before rainbow trout, we had traditional buttermilk, and our ingredients are not fully parsed or anywhere near production ready in terms of which ingredients we're recommending, but we do see them here. And so I say I don't like traditional buttermilk, and I skip over to our rainbow trout, right? The key here that's really interesting, and it's something that I think is valuable in concept. I think we need to rethink exactly how we're doing it. Is for each of these, I have calculated specifically how many grams of this ingredient we need to fill the gap of iodine based on our initial scan, right? So if you recall, our initial scan is directional. It's not, that we know that we have a certain number of milligrams of iodine in this meal or fiber in this meal, but based on the directional range and whether or not there is an upper limit of toxicity, for which usually it's like in the 200% range, right? It takes a lot of this stuff to become toxic because these are nutrients that your body uses, and in some cases works with, stay in the body for long periods of time. So that's not as much of a risk as it would be with like some kind of external medicine or something like that, right? But based on that, we were able to create a take the nutrient density for each item as we stored it in the database. So we have rainbow trout has a nutrient density for iron, iodine, calcium, all of that, and that's in the fractions of a gram. It's actually in milligrams, right? And so based on that, we were able to estimate a range from our directional, right? So we know that if iodine is somewhere in between. I think this is somewhere in between 13 and 18% based on what Gemini is telling us. If iodine is somewhere in between that, then this recommendation of either buttermilk or more aptly rainbow trout, um, for us to get the either, what is it, 82 to 87% of it, we would need about 178 grams of rainbow trout, right? So we're actually telling you for each of your shortages, and this goes to our trust versus automation gap, right? We are not just building trust in terms of telling you a story about what's not optimal in this meal or what needs to be improved for the day. We are now also telling you specifically what you need to eat or have the child eat to close specific gaps. So that's an automation, but it's automation that started from a story where we built trust. So we're connecting trust and automation. We're not just saying, I want to have, you should have rainbow trout today. Why? Why should I have rainbow trout? We're starting to tell that story, and we're providing some flexibility. The way that we're doing it, we're providing flexibility, and that we're not, just saying eat rainbow trout with this, with that, and call it a day. We're saying for each of these things, you can pick each of these nutrients. You can pick which one or which ingredient you want to serve your child. You can pick that, right? So you can pick rainbow trout, or you can cycle to something else. Oh, 55 grams of aged Swiss cheese is probably a little bit easier than swapping out a meal for rainbow trout, particularly if I didn't plan to have trout today, or it's not in season or something like that. But I have trust built from the beginning, and then I have an automation based on the story that I trust, and that's a key distinction here. I still have freedom to choose whether or not, am I changing my meal completely by serving mackerel tonight, or am I just supplementing with adding a little bit more cheese? I have the flexibility to choose that, and I'm probably basing that decision as a parent on, okay, what what requires the least effort, at least in some instances. Sometimes I might say, oh, I had a taste for fish tonight, so yeah, let's go with mackerel, right? Again, some of these are obscure, pearl and hemp seeds, but I might say, oh, I can, mussels, kids don't eat mussels, right? I might say, and I took this recording before, so I'm kind of scrolling through, but I might say, I want mackerel. I might say, it's easier to serve the Swiss cheese, and then when it comes to the omega-3 stuff, I can put some hemp seeds on their side, or I can find a way for them to get 3 grams of hemp seeds. That's very dense in omega-3s, for them to get the rest of their omega-3s for the day. So that's great, right? This is useful. The other piece here that's really useful is for each of our actual ingredients that can be displayed here or displayed here, and you see these two match, right? So whenever we cycle through, then this becomes the representative for omega-3s and shows up here as well. Hemp becomes the representative for omega-3, whereas prior to that, I think it was something obscure like pearlsan or whatever else. But let's say, for any of these things, my kid doesn't really like the way it tastes, or I might not think that they would like the way it tastes. I have 3 different ways to hide hemp seeds here. Mix into chili, hide in power sliders, fold into cheesy quesadillas, right? These are saved in the database with hemp seeds. So each ingredient has a set of 3 elements to hide, or 3 ways to hide it in its database entry, and those can be populated when it's selected. So that's really, really, really useful as a concept. We need to think about whether or not how specific we get with these directions. If they're not having chili, then saying stir it into chili may not be useful. Maybe we need to be more prescriptive about type of things that you can stir it into, as opposed to a specific item which may not be on the menu for tonight. So, some things to consider going forward. But the idea of having ways to hide hemp seeds, ways to hide, fold in things, ways to hide cheese. You do have some kids that may not. I can't think of any kids that don't like the taste of cheese, but there are different things that may pop up here: blackberries, blueberries, um, even some of the heavier protein items, and we can talk about ways to actually hide them. Um, so that can be very useful for parents, right? Now we go down to our recipes, and this assumes that if you don't want to go through the work associated with picking out ingredients and plugging them into things, we actually give you recipes that meet your needs, your top three needs. So this is a feed from the Edamame recipe API, and as you can see here on my Gemini instance, I have a chat where I'm kind of going back and forth about how to get recipes from the API, Edamame API, and this was the ultimate result. But from this page, what we do is we take the top three deficiencies, and then we go into the Edamame recipe API and ask it for recipes that are strong on those particular nutrients. That particular API has the ability for us to do that. So I'm going to pause this here because there's some other features that are showing up, like rescan and whatever else that I put in there too. But I think the big crux of this discussion here is having some prescriptive element to activate the story we tell when it comes to building trust. So we tell a story that tells the parents what's not optimal in a meal, and we tell them what that impacts as far as outcomes. But then here, what we do is we provide a customizable or a customized automation that tells them what to do about it in either a way, a flexible way where they can think through that themselves, exactly how they want to do it based on what's going on today, what they have a taste for, what's on the menu, what's in the refrigerator, or if they want to give us the control to tell them what to actually cook tonight, and if they want a complete meal, then we give them that flexibility as well. So this is very interesting. I would say that this is a successful version 1 implementation. Our um, we have our scan coming, from the Gemini API back into local here. We have our automation as far as providing a menu of items that correlate to the problem that the story has highlighted. And then if you don't want a menu of items, then we just have recipes that solve these problems as well. Going forward, we're going to need to think about strategically how this entire offering feels to parents, and whether or not there's a better way to approach the story. Apps work in the technical sense, to provide answers, but the key to connecting with the audience is how are you telling a story, and are you getting the mechanics of that story right? And I'm not entirely certain that we are just yet. And so we may need to rethink how we do some of these elements. But I am certain that our approach of attempting to close the trust versus automation gap that we identified in our competitive analysis, I am certain that we are getting closer. We've developed functionality that's in the right lane when it comes to that. Now we just need to shore up the story and essentially do a product teardown on what is our product at this point, and see if we want to continue in this UI direction or if there are significant changes that we need to make. So we will cover that in videos coming up.